I'm going to show you guys, using things that I am an expert in, just how much better the new OpenAI A1 ChatGPT model actually is. First off, let's go through a little bit of the confusion with the naming and everything. It's called OpenAI O1 is what it's called, but it is still inside ChatGPT, so it's still related to ChatGPT. There's people who put ChatGPT in their video titles are still technically correct because you can still use this new model inside ChatGPT. I'm going to show you guys just how much better the new OpenAI O1 model actually is, using something that I am an expert in to see if it can understand the subtle nuances of topics. This is what the supposed difference is between ChatGPT 4.0 and Claude Sonnet 3.5 and the new OpenAI O1 model. These names are getting very, very confusing, and I'm trying my best to keep up with all of them. But let's just quickly talk about whether this is ChatGPT or not. So because you can still use this inside on the ChatGPT website, then I would still call this a ChatGPT. But we'll see, because, I mean, they've completely removed GPT from the model name, which I think is a very, very interesting move in itself. So let's talk a little bit about what I'm going to use as an example. So on my screen, I'm just going to quickly show you that basically, so I am actually, I don't know how many people know this, but I'm actually a language teaching expert as well. Like, I taught for 6 to 7 years as a madrelingua, mother tongue, as they call them in Italy. So they're basically people who don't necessarily have the teaching qualification to teach in Italy, but they have the experience, and because they're a native level speaker, they can teach in Italian schools. And I did that for 4 years, I think it was. And previously I taught in Spain and other places as well. And it's actually one of the reasons I'm so good at languages as well, is because I've taught my language, so I understand how to learn other languages. So I'm really, really good at picking up new languages. I speak Italian. I understand Neapolitan, which is the dialect of Naples in Italy. I spoke Spanish. I spoke Dutch in the past as well. It wouldn't take me very long to pick up either of those languages. I could probably learn German fairly quickly as well. And one thing that I really, really was good at was kind of giving kids the inspiration and motivation and reasons for learning a language, because a lot of it was lost on these kids who were just getting screamed at by their teachers, basically, and their teachers couldn't really speak English anyway. So I felt I was really, really good at showing and giving that motivation, and also coming up with creative ways of teaching. So I'm going to try and use that knowledge and foundation to try and see if we can see a difference between the ChatGPT 4.0 and O1 preview. So I actually have some conversations that I've already had with these models on the side. This is ChatGPT 4.0. So all I said was explain the present tense to an Italian native speaker in English. The reason I'm choosing these kind of things is because there are subtle nuances that I don't think ChatGPT 4.0 is going to pick up, whereas something like the new O1 preview will pick up. So let's just have a look at these examples. So I just said explain the present tense to an Italian native speaker in English. So one thing is that Italians find it extremely difficult to learn the present perfect tense. The reason is literally translated, this tense would be, for example, I have eaten, which is acceptable in Italian. Ho mangiato, I have eaten. But it's kind of hard to explain, but they have the opposite meaning and opposite use cases in Italian and English. So I wanted to see if ChatGPT 4.0 would pick up on that. Imperfect tense in English is used to talk about actions or events that happened at an unspecified time in the past, but have a connection to the present. It is formed with have, has, plus the past participle of the verb. Here's how it works. Completed actions with present relevance. We use it to describe something that happened in the past, but its effects or importance continue into the present. For example, I have finished my homework. The action of finishing is in the past, but now the homework is done, and this matters in the present. So for example, if someone says, have you done your homework? You would say, I have finished my homework, or I've done my homework. Life experiences. It's also used to talk about life experiences without mentioning when they happened. She has visited Rome as a life experience. She has been to Rome. We don't say when. So one thing that is majorly different between the Italian ho mangiato and English I have eaten is you cannot say I have eaten yesterday. Grammatically it doesn't make sense because you've specified a time, so you cannot use the present perfect. The opposite is true in Italian. You say ho mangiato ieri, which means I ate yesterday. So this is one of the reasons why it's so confusing for Italians to learn this tense specifically. Recently completed actions. It can be described something that has just finished. They have just arrived. So in this case, you would use just to say like right now. The action is recent and has an effect on now. Actions that started in the past and continue. We use it for actions that began in the past and are still happening. I have lived here for 5 years. In Italian, you might find similarities with the passato prossimo, but in English, the present perfect is more focused on the connection to the present moment rather than past events. For example, ho mangiato could translate to I have eaten. In the sense that it affects the present. You're no longer hungry. Examples, I have eaten. She has worked for 10 years. Lavora qui da 10 anni. Key tip, we don't usually use the present perfect with specific time expressions like yesterday or last week. Instead, we use it with expressions like ever, never, already, and just. So, I mean, this is a pretty good summary by ChatGPT 4.0, but let's have a look if O1 Preview, got the subtleties and the nuances in this. So, understanding grammar tenses. I'm working through the explanation of the present perfect tense, focusing on its English usage, translation challenges, and Italian parallels, aiming for clarity and instructional depth. Investigating tense differences, I'm comparing the English present perfect tense to Italian passato prossimo. English uses have plus participle for unspecified past actions or ongoing past actions, while Italian often prefers passato prossimo for similar contexts. The present perfect tense in English blends the auxiliary verb have. So, I mean, this wasn't explained in the first one, that it's an auxiliary verb. This would be good for a learner to know that have is auxiliary in this case. Because they might not know that and they might not know what an auxiliary verb is, so that would be important to know. With the past participle of the main verb, it often addresses actions or events that happened at an unspecified time in the past. And then you can see there's a lot more thinking here, but I just want to see the results, so let's have a look. Understanding the present perfect tense in English. The present perfect tense is used to connect the past with the present. It is formed using the auxiliary verb have in the present tense, followed by the past participle of the main verb. Structure, subject plus have has, plus past participle. Examples, I have visited London. She has finished her work. When to use the present perfect. Actions completed at an unspecified time before now. Use it with the specific time is not important or not mentioned. They have moved to a new house. Italian comparison similar to loro sono andati in una nuova casa. Okay, good. So this shows to an Italian learner who might be using this the difference, because sono andati is sono is essere, it's the verb to be, I am, etc. So they actually say they are gone to a new house. So it's explaining the difference in the actual meaning. So that's very, very useful to a learner. Life experiences, to talk about experiences up to the present. Example, he has traveled to Japan. Italian comparison, lui ha viaggiato in Giappone. The same thing, but in this case, this is avere, which is have, to have. So it's actually the same usage. Actions that started in the past and continue to the present, often used with for and since. Example, we have known each other since 2010. Italian comparison, ci conosciamo dal 2010. I don't know, I can't remember how to say that. This is also very useful because in Italian they use a completely different structure of this sentence, and it's very helpful for an Italian to read these two side by side. So if you actually read my question, my question was very specific, and this is the most specific part of the question. I think this is the real difference between GPT-4o and O1 Preview, or ChatGPT O1 Preview as it says up here. God, these names are getting very, very confusing now. But this is the main difference between those two models, is that this model here understands the nuances, and it understands that it's useful, it's very, very useful for them to see these side-by-side comparisons so that they can understand that it's not the same in their language. This is something that's not taught well enough in Italian schools, the difference between the present perfect and the passato prossimo in these two languages. So yeah, again, absolutely nailed it. Recent actions with present relevance. Actions that have an effect on the present moment. Example, I have lost my keys, meaning you do not have them now. Italian comparison, ho perso le chiavi. In this case, it's the same usage. Key differences from Italian. In Italian, the passato prossimo, ho mangiato, sorry, often covers both the English simple past and the present perfect. So this is where the confusion lies. This was one of the hardest things to teach kids in Italy because their brains were so Italian and Neapolitan that it was very hard for them to break through that. So something like this would have actually helped a lot, because this is a very good summary with side-by-side comparisons. Specific time expressions. English do not use the present perfect with specific time expressions, like yesterday, last week. Incorrect, I have seen that movie yesterday. Correct, I saw that movie yesterday. In Italian, ho visto quel film ieri. So this, again, is very, very helpful to see this side-by-side comparison. To be honest with you, this would make a perfect lesson plan for someone who has no idea how to teach English, and they just read this and they just go through this with an Italian group and it will work perfectly. Continuing actions. English uses present perfect for actions continuing to the present, while Italian might use the present tense. She has lived here for 5 years. Lei vive qui da 5 anni. Common time expressions used with the present perfect. Again, very, very useful. Ever and never. Have you ever been to Rome? Just, already, yet. She has just finished her homework. They have already left. Have you finished your meal yet? For and since. I have known him for 10 years. We have worked here since March. Tips for Italian speakers. Avoid specific past times. Do not use present perfect with times like yesterday, last night, 2 days ago. Remember the auxiliary verb use have or has before the past participle. Past participle forms. Some English verbs have irregular past participles. Again, that's very, very useful to mention that. Practice sentences. Experience. I have never eaten sushi. This is really good as well. So some real life examples that they can then use and take into the real world and learn through using the expressions that are here. So I've never eaten sushi. Unspecified time. They have bought a new car. Continuing action. She has studied English since she was a child. Recent action. We have just arrived at the airport. Summary. Do not use the present perfect to link past actions to the present moment. Do not use it with specific time expressions. Be mindful of irregular past participles. Practice using time expressions commonly paired with the present perfect. I mean, I would say it's much better here. The O1 preview has a much better answer to the question, which is the important thing. Like GPT 4.0 did a very good kind of basic overview, but it just lost a few of the subtle nuances that were needed to really make this a good response, which this is a much, much better response. So let's have a look at the next one here. This is GPT 4.0, and I just asked, what does ti voglio bene mean? This is an Italian expression which has kind of a very hard to define meaning. Ti voglio bene is an Italian phrase that means I care about you or I love you, but it conveys a deep, affectionate and platonic kind of love, typically used among close friends and family members. It's different from ti amo, which expresses romantic love. This is almost true, but it's not purely platonic always, and it's not romantic, if that makes sense. I think Italians would agree with me. Obviously, I'm going to get a load of comments if Italians watch this telling me I'm wrong, but it can have romantic implications if said to a partner. So next up, we have ChatGPT O1 preview. What does ti voglio bene mean? Ti voglio bene is an Italian phrase that translates to I care for you or I love you. It's a way of expressing affection, warmth, or deep friendship to someone. While it conveys strong feelings, it's generally considered less intense than ti amo. Generally is a key word there, which is reserved for romantic love. People often use ti voglio bene with family members, close friends, or anyone they hold dear, which can mean someone that you are romantically involved with. So this is completely correct, okay? Because ti amo is reserved for your partner. You don't say ti amo to anyone else except your partner, okay? But you can say ti voglio bene to your partner. In fact, one of the most famous songs from Italy is Ti voglio Bene Assai, which is actually a really, really beautiful song, but that's not what it's called. One of the most famous Italian songs is Caruso by Lucio Dalla, and it's a love song, and the chorus is Ti voglio bene assai, okay? So you can use this romantically, but you cannot use Ti amo unless it's romantic, okay? So this answer is 100% correct, whereas the answer from 4.0 is incorrect because it actually says that it does say typically used among close friends and family members. But yeah, it does say it's platonic, so it's generally platonic, but it's not always platonic. So this is actually an incorrect translation of Ti voglio bene. So again, very, very interesting. So I tried another one here, ChatGPT 4.0. Give me 10 phrases to help me get around on my weekend trip to Napoli. So I thought these were pretty good as responses, to be honest with you. Dove è il bagno? Quanto costa? Can I have the bill? Is there a good restaurant? I would like a coffee. Do you speak English? Can you help me? Blah, blah, blah. But one thing that was missing, and one thing that O1 Preview actually did, was how to actually pronounce these things. Because obviously I speak Italian, but this answer here is not very useful to someone who doesn't already speak Italian, right? And if you say, give me 10 phrases to help me get around on my weekend trip to Napoli, if you read the question here, to help me get around on my weekend trip to Napoli, which is kind of insinuating that I have no idea how to speak Italian, I've never been, I just need to get around, I need to survive, basically. So if we go back to here, it actually gives how to pronounce it, which I think is really cool. So I said the same thing to O1 Preview, give me 10 phrases to help me get around on my weekend trip to Napoli. Ciao, per favore, yeah, it's actually really interesting. Grazie, dove è bagno? Dove è il bagno? Quanto costa? Parla inglese. I think this is really useful. Mi scusi. Very, very accurate pronunciation if you just read these, which is interesting as well. Vorrei ordinare. Yeah, that's correct as well. Può aiutarmi? Dove si trova? Where is? So again, really, really interesting that it just adds that little salt that's missing, that little spice, that little je ne sais quoi. Yeah, which O1 Preview has. And I think this is really what I'm trying to get at is people are saying this isn't like a big leap forward, whatever, blah, blah, blah. This is huge if you just consider the implications of this, which is that people who don't know how to use ChatGPT properly don't need to have 10,000 word prompts, and they don't need to learn prompt engineering, and they don't need to even really think anymore. Basically, they can just write this and get a very, very good response every single time. So I did a few more examples here. I think this is particularly good because this is a use case. Do a lesson plan for 7-year-olds learning action verbs and present continuous in Italy in English. So lesson plan, action verbs and present continuous, age 7, objective. By the end of the lesson, students will be able to identify and use common action verbs, form sentences using the present continuous tense, subject, verb, to be, plus verb, plus ing. If that doesn't make any sense to you, don't worry, it's just grammar speech. Materials needed, flashcards. I've never used a flashcard in my life. In 6 years of teaching, I never used flashcards. Of action verbs, e.g. run, jump, swim, etc. Whiteboard and markers. Pictures of people performing different actions. Isn't that the same thing as a flashcard? Songs like If You're Happy and You Know It or similar. I would have preferred head, shoulders, knees and toes there, ChatGPT. Worksheets with fill-in-the-blank sentences. Colouring sheets related to action verbs. They're all trash. You're not going to do colouring sheets. Don't do colouring sheets. It's a nightmare. Lesson structure. Number 1, warm up, greetings and routine, blah, 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 quick activity, introduce the objective. Okay, how are you going to introduce that objective if they don't speak English? They don't speak English. They're 7 years old. How am I supposed to introduce? Stupid. Really stupid. Presentation. Introduce action verbs. Show flashcards with pictures of different actions and say the verb aloud. Run, swim, read. Now you've confused them because you've taught them the infinitive instead of just the action verb, the ing version. Ask students to repeat after you and act out the action. There's nothing wrong with just teaching people ing immediately. Practice. Hold up flashcards and ask, what am I doing? Students respond with the action like run or swim. This is a really bad lesson plan, because now you've really confused them, because now you're basically teaching them that the way to say you are swimming is run, swim. So this is pure trash if you actually carry out this lesson plan as this is written. Present continuous introduction. Explain the present continuous. Write a simple sentence on the board. I am running. Break down the sentence. I, the subject, am, the verb to be, running, the action with ing added. So one thing that's missing here as well is that this is exactly the same in Italian. All you do in Italian is conjugate the verb. So sto, for example, is I am. And then running is correre, or correndo, with endo is the same as ing. So something that I found really useful is to immediately tell students that, even though you're not allowed to use the student's language, which I always thought that was bullshit as well. I found it really useful to be like, look, this is exactly the same in my language and your language. You just need to change the words around, and then that clicks in their head. And that's something that no one ever said to me when I was learning languages when I was younger, is there are similarities between our languages if you look at them. No one ever taught me that. And I think it's a really, really good way to teach kids, even though people say it's a bad method. I've never found it to be unhelpful. Examples and practice. Show a picture of a child jumping and say he is jumping. Ask students to repeat, blah, blah, blah. This is really... Action verbs, Simon says. Play Simon says, but use action verbs. Simon says jump. Again, you're just confusing them by using the infinitive, or whatever that would be called. It's not the infinitive, it's got another word. But Simon says swim. After a few rounds, introduce the present continuous tense. Why? Simon says you are jumping, you are clapping. Yeah, I really, overall, not impressed with this whatsoever. Let's have a look how O1 Preview did. I didn't actually read through this. I have no idea if this is better or not. One thing immediately that is better is that it's 60 minutes instead of 45 minutes, because lessons in Italy are 1 hour, which is a very subtle thing, but, you know, it's almost like it took into the context that it's in Italy. I want to see if it actually did that. All lessons in Italy are an hour. I've never had a 45-minute. Okay, so let's have a look. Language skills. Identify and use common actions in English. Form sentences using the present continuous tense. Communication skills. Improve listening and speaking through interactive activities. Enhance reading and writing with simple sentences. So, if you don't know, there are 4 categories of learning a language according to the system of learning English, which is Cambridge-based. Cambridge University basically has a massive money spinner where they are basically the authority of English learning in the entire world. I don't know how many people know that, but there are 4 pillars. There's listening, speaking, reading, and writing. And all language learning that I've ever done has been based on those 4 pillars. So it's really interesting that it's picked up on that and it's said that. This is the kind of stuff that you need to do a TEFL, or I think they're called TESOL or something in America, teaching English as a foreign language, or teaching English as a second language, it's called in America, I think. You need to do a TEFL to learn this kind of stuff, but you don't really need to anymore because you can just follow this. Materials, flashcards with action verbs, pictures depicting various actions, whiteboard and markers, worksheets for practice, audio clips of actions, props for acting out verbs. Lesson steps, warm-up, greetings. Welcome the students with a cheerful good morning. Action song. Oh my god, it actually did. Head, shoulders, knees and toes. Sing if you're happy and you know it, or heads, shoulders, knees and toes. Head, shoulders, knees and toes translates into Italian very well. They have the same thing. I'm not going to do it, but yeah, they have the exact same song in Italian. I can't. Testa spalle. I'm a very serious YouTuber. Okay. If you're happy and you know it, head, shoulders, knees and toes. Encourage students to perform the actions while singing. Okay, yeah, exactly, yeah, good. You've got to get them working. That's a really, really good way to get them interested and motivated, which is something, again, that's often lacking, probably a lot of school systems. My school system was the same, to be honest with you. I always was taught at instead of taught with, or whatever, like with action and introducing to action, especially when you're teaching action verbs. Introduction to action verbs, flashcard presentation. Show flashcards one by one, pronounce each verb clearly and have the students repeat. So this is much better because you are telling them and getting them to repeat it. I personally would do ing here, but yeah, you don't have to. Action mimicking. Act out each verb and ask students to join in. Examples, jumping, clapping, reading. Present continuous tense explanation. Simple explanation. Write on the board, I am, ing. Explain that this form is used for actions happening right now. In this present moment. I am jumping, she is running. Student participation. Ask students to come up with their own examples using the verbs learn. Okay, good. So now they're instantly adding the verb here and understanding what that is, what effect that has on the language. Student participation. Ask students to come up, blah, blah, blah. Interactive activity, pair work, 15 minutes. Picture description. Divide students into pairs. Give each pair a picture showing an action. Sentence formation. Students create a sentence in the present continuous tense based on the picture. Example, he is eating an apple. Sharing. Each pair shares their sentence with the class. I like that because then every single person has to say a sentence. They have to understand and then it can be corrected if they do it incorrectly. 5. Game. Action charades. Okay, this is super, super interesting, guys. This was not on the other one. This really shows that it understands the nuances. I have done this class probably 50 times. The first 10 I did, they weren't very active. And then after I realized, like, I need to somehow get the kids active, to be enjoying themselves, to be excited, to want to learn, to have that motivation. And one of the things I did was charades. I called it mime, where I would mime an action, like running, and the kids would all shout, you are running! And then, I would pick a kid, and then a kid would come to the front, a kid would do an action, and then all the kids, they put their hand up, or normally just scream what they're doing, and then everyone's practicing, everyone's having fun, everyone's learning, and that's exactly what this has suggested here. So game, action, charades, instructions. One student picks a verb card and acts it out without speaking. Class participation. The rest of the class guesses the action using the present continuous tense. Example, you are swimming. The reason this is so effective as well is because you can say you are swimming or he is swimming, because what often happens with this particular lesson is the kids learn I am swimming, but they don't learn you are and he is. So that's another really important consideration as well that it's picked up on. So you are swimming. Rotate. Allow several students to have a turn acting. Good. Worksheet activity, 10 minutes. Hand out worksheets with fill-in-the-blank sentences and matching exercises. Individual work, students complete the worksheets. Go over the class answers as a class, reinforcing correct usage. Literally perfect. Closing and homework. Like you wouldn't be able to do better than this with a TEFL, or maybe even a CELTA. Although CELTAs are 3 months, whereas a TEFL is only 1 week. But still, like, this is better preparation than I had from my TEFL. I paid for a TEFL. It was a week course. I didn't learn anything. I didn't know any grammar. I went to Spain and I taught English. I was teaching English grammar verbally without actually understanding what I was teaching. And that's how I somehow learned English grammar, was by teaching English grammar without even understanding English grammar. And then after that was how I started to learn other languages, because I understood my own grammar, which helped me understand other languages. I wouldn't have been able to do a better job than this, and I've got 6 years teaching experience. So I find this really, really interesting, because there is a huge difference between these two lesson plans, a huge difference. And this is just one example. This is just what I'm an expert on. But this reasoning is, they've obviously got something here. But overall, especially with something like the action verb lesson plan, GPT-01 Preview did a significantly better job than 4.0. Now, I hope that was interesting, guys. I hope that I was able to give some insight into the differences between these two models and the fact that this actually is a massive upgrade. And you can also use this inside the API, which means you can do this inside your programs, which is really interesting, and I will definitely be doing. Thanks for watching. If you're watching all the way to the end, you're a legend. See you soon with some more content. Peace out.